Before we start, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, leave your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Because what I'm about to reveal, no one talks about it. I never thought I'd say this out loud, but what I discovered one night changed everything I believed about love, family, and trust. Most people think betrayal only happens between couples, between husbands and cheating wives, or through emotional cheating behind closed doors. But my story? It's not just a cheating story. It's the kind of infidelity story that lives in the shadows, that no one dares to speak. Until now. You see, sometimes the most shocking confession isn't about who you betrayed, but about who you shared the betrayal with. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a true story. And it started in the middle of the night, with a touch I thought was just a dream, until I opened my eyes and saw my uncle standing there. Yes, my uncle. I know it sounds insane. I know you're already judging. But what if I told you that there are feelings that defy all logic? What if I told you that forbidden love sometimes grows in silence, in confusion, and in places where pain meets comfort? If you think you're ready for a raw, unfiltered infidelity confession, one that crosses every line society draws, then keep watching. Because once you hear this story, you'll never look at trust the same way again. It started like any ordinary night, nothing special, really. I remember pulling the sheets up to my chin, letting the coolness wrap around my legs, while the faint noise of the ceiling fan whispered me to sleep. But then something changed. A warmth began spreading through my body, slow and deliberate, almost as if I wasn't alone anymore. It felt like a dream, one of those that blurs the lines between desire and reality. I could have sworn I was still asleep, caught in the middle of some emotional cheating fantasy. The kind of forbidden love you'd only expect to find in a cheating story or a betrayal story whispered about in secret. But it wasn't wild or aggressive. It was tender, like someone knew exactly how I wanted to be touched. My body responded before my mind could catch up, and I felt this magnetic pull toward a pleasure that felt personal, familiar even. There's a certain kind of infidelity story people never talk about, the one that starts not with someone else, but within your own skin. I kept my eyes closed, pretending it was all just a vivid dream, but my senses screamed otherwise. Every movement against my body was deliberate, affectionate, and dangerously real. It wasn't just a fantasy. It was the beginning of a true story, the kind people deny to themselves, over and over again. I wanted to believe it was just a fantasy, the result of exhaustion or maybe some lonely craving. But deep inside, I knew better. Something in me had been awakened, stirred by the intensity of this strange, beautiful, terrifying moment. And although I didn't yet know where it would lead, I felt it. It was only the beginning. And that's when things began to shift, and the lines between reality and illusion started to vanish. I kept my eyes shut, hoping that staying still would preserve the illusion. But the more I resisted, the more intense it became. A hand, soft, warm, deliberate, moved over my skin like it belonged there, like it had done this before. My breath hitched, not in fear, but in anticipation. I asked myself, is this still a dream? Or am I wide awake in the middle of a forbidden love no one would ever understand? Time slowed down. My mind was trying to rationalize, but my body betrayed me with every tremble. I could feel emotions I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Desire, curiosity, even comfort. This wasn't just emotional cheating. It was a full-blown infidelity confession happening silently between my thoughts and sensations. I wasn't just a woman being touched. I was a soul being seen in the dark. You know, when you're in a cheating wife situation, when your body reacts before your morals do, there's a terrifying kind of clarity. My instincts screamed that this wasn't a dream. I wasn't imagining the way fingers pressed gently into my skin, or how my body leaned into them. I had crossed a line without moving an inch, and the scariest part was, I didn't want to go back. This wasn't a betrayal story someone else wrote. This was mine. I wish I could say I opened my eyes in that moment and put a stop to it, but I didn't. I was suspended in a state between disbelief and surrender, a fragile thread between right and wrong. I knew something or someone was there, but I didn't yet know who. And that's when a voice, a scent, a breath brought me even closer to the truth I wasn't ready to face. I wish I could tell you I resisted, that I jumped out of bed and pushed everything away, but I didn't. Instead, I let go. There was something sacred about that moment, something beyond just physical touch. It wasn't just about sensation. It was about being wanted, truly, deeply wanted. And in that space, I began to understand how many of us crave this kind of emotional cheating more than we admit. Pleasure has a strange way of making us honest. For the first time in years, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't performing or just doing what I was supposed to. I was feeling, fully, unapologetically. And that feeling, though tied to a shocking confession, was liberating. It made me realize how much I had abandoned my own needs and how desperate I was to be seen not as a wife, not as a woman, but as me. So many people live their entire lives without ever experiencing this kind of raw intensity. They carry around their betrayal stories, locked away behind guilt and silence, never daring to open them. But in that moment, I understood why some cheating wives don't regret what they did. Because sometimes what the world calls betrayal is just someone finally choosing themselves. As strange as it sounds, I didn't feel shame. I felt clarity. That moment forced me to rethink what love really means, what loyalty really is. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about black and white. Maybe there was space in between where forbidden love and emotional truth could exist, where a true story of self-discovery could begin, and where hidden truths would soon come to light. It happened in a split second. My eyes opened, and there he was, my uncle, standing at the edge of the bed, like he belonged there. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, everything inside me screamed run. But I didn't. Instead, I froze, not in fear, but in this strange, impossible mix of familiarity and shock. That's when it hit me. This wasn't the first time I had felt that presence. There are moments in life when reality slaps you so hard, it leaves your soul echoing. This was one of them. The cheating story I thought only existed in someone else's world, those whispers about a cheating wife or a marriage betrayal, was now my own. Except I wasn't married to him, and yet somehow I was the one feeling like I'd crossed a sacred line. And still, I couldn't deny the warmth in my chest. He didn't say a word, just looked at me, quietly, like he was asking permission without using his voice. And what terrified me most was not the fact that he was there, but the fact that I didn't feel violated. I felt seen, desired. Maybe that's the most dangerous kind of infidelity confession. The one where you realize you wanted it before you knew it was happening. The one that leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, boundaries, and yourself. I lay there in silence, tangled in sheets and emotions I couldn't name. The guilt hadn't arrived yet, just the pulse of something ancient and real. Was it betrayal? Was it twisted? Or was it the rawest form of connection I had ever known? I couldn't answer that. All I knew was this wasn't a one-time event. Because as shocking as it was, something inside me whispered, this wasn't the beginning. It was the continuation. This wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a moment of madness. That night confirmed something I had buried deep inside. This had happened before. A memory I had labeled as just a dream came flooding back with terrifying clarity. That wasn't the first time his hands had found me under the safety of darkness. And suddenly, I wasn't just living a cheating story. I was in a full-blown forbidden love I could no longer deny. We never spoke about it. Not in words, at least. But our eyes held the truth that language couldn't carry. I was a woman torn between shock and desire, between guilt and the comfort of feeling understood. It wasn't just a betrayal story. It was the story of two souls dancing in the shadows, hiding from the world's judgment. I didn't know if I was the villain or just a woman lost in a truth no one would believe. There's a kind of silence that screams louder than anything. We went on with life, pretending it never happened. Yet, every time we were near each other, the tension simmered just beneath the surface. He would glance at me like he was remembering everything. I would feel it too, that magnetic force we never talked about. And in that quiet war of glances, we kept our emotional cheating alive, unspoken but deeply real. I know what you're thinking. How could she? But love doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't follow rules. What started as a shocking confession turned into a hidden routine, each moment stolen from reality, hidden behind locked doors. And while my conscience whispered warnings, my heart had already crossed the line. Still, I kept wondering, how far would we go before the truth shattered everything? I know what the world would say. They'd call it wrong, shameful, unforgivable. But when you're in the middle of something this intense, logic takes a back seat. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like connection. I wasn't just another cheating wife in a cheating story. I was a woman rediscovering parts of herself that had been ignored, dismissed, buried beneath years of pretending to be fine.
He saw me.
Not just my body, but my thoughts, my wounds, my longing. And when someone sees you like that, really sees you, it becomes almost impossible to turn away. I know it's a forbidden love, a marriage betrayal without the marriage part. But still, it felt more honest than anything I'd known before. That emotional cheating had become my survival, my safe place, my escape. We justify things to survive. That's just how humans are wired. I told myself that age is just a number, that blood doesn't mean ownership, and that love can bloom in places no one dares to look. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was selfish. But isn't that the core of every infidelity confession? A heart screaming for something it was never allowed to want and grabbing it anyway? I felt cherished, desired. Not because I was someone's responsibility, but because I was someone's choice. And for a woman who had spent years being invisible, that feeling was addictive. I wasn't the first to fall into a story of betrayal like this. And I knew I wouldn't be the last. But what I didn't know yet was how long we could keep living this true story before the cost caught up to us. Now I want to ask you something only you can answer. How far would you go to feel truly seen? Would you risk everything for a moment of emotional honesty? Have you ever been so hungry for affection that even the wrong person felt like the right one? This wasn't just a forbidden love. This was a mirror, one that forced me to confront the parts of myself I kept hidden even from me. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real betrayal story here. Not between two people, but between the life I had and the life I wanted. So now I turn it to you. What are you hiding from? What secret story are you living in silence? Drop your thoughts in the comments.
Be brave.
Because the more we talk, the more we heal. And don't forget to subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to hear a truth no one else is willing to speak out loud. This is just the beginning. Let's keep going together.